Thank you, Shubham, for inviting me over here today. And over the next 10 minutes or so, it'll be my duty to give you an idea about what is new about ERAS and what me as a pulmonologist, what do I see about it. We have seen numerous publications coming about on ERAS over the last 15 to 17 years, and there is a lot been written about it. There have been numerous guidelines which have come out for various areas of surgery, including lung surgery. The ERAS principles for thoracic surgery have been very nicely elucidated by Dr. Batchelor et al. And it has divided them into the pre, intra, and post-operative phases. Being a pulmonologist, my current responsibility in the next 10 minutes is to give you an idea about the pre-operative or the prehabilitation part of ERAS, and I shall try to convey the importance of that to you. As we obviously start off right from the beginning, the one of the most important things is smoking cessation. And as we are already aware, the earlier you ask the patient to stop smoking, you find the beneficial effects come on much earlier. We are living in a country wherein COPD is a major problem. In fact, a meta-analysis by Butler et al. Showed a pooled prevalence of lung cancer in the COPD population was 2.79%, which was much higher than the general population. People with COPD are almost 6 times more likely to develop lung cancer than controls. Even the Global Burden of Disease India report has identified that chronic respiratory diseases is a big problem in our country. And COPD is probably the second leading cause of deaths and disability limited life years in our country. And we are very well aware that existence of comorbidities in lung cancer can impact not only the survival, but also the quality of life, apart from the fact that it also affects the various treatment modalities that the person can be given. And Indian data has shown a COPD prevalence of almost 41.9% in lung cancer. In a Danish study, only 31% of COPD patients had been diagnosed amongst lung cancer patients, and only 33% had received guideline-appropriate treatment prior to study. Now, this is extremely interesting. If the COPD is not even diagnosed early, how will you optimize the patient? So poor lung functions and overall poor performance status can influence and avoid a potentially curative surgical resection and prevent the patient from getting good therapy. In a study of 455 patients with COPD and lung cancer, patients with severe COPD had reduced survival after 2 and 5 years as compared to non-severe COPD, with a 69% increased risk of mortality. In fact, a meta-analysis has shown of 6 studies of COPD and post-resection lung cancer that COPD was associated with an overall lower survival, prolonged mechanical ventilation, and higher rates of pneumonia. And in these patients, rehabilitation really improved the lung function recovery and also improved the post-operative complications which would follow after surgery. Another important disease which is often overlooked is interstitial lung disease. And I'm sure you would agree that IPF is associated with the high incidence of lung cancer with a relative risk of 7 to 14 compared to the general population. Almost 2 to 4% of collagen vascular disease associated interstitial lung disease is associated with lung cancer. And a number of studies have placed the incidence of interstitial lung disease in non-squamous cell lung cancer patients from 2% to almost 4%. In some studies, the prevalence of lung cancer at the time of diagnosis of ILD has been reported as 6, 17, and 15%. So this highlights to you the importance of early recognition of interstitial lung disease in lung cancer patients. We also need to understand that interstitial lung disease patients are more likely to develop post-operative complications leading to mechanical ventilation and death. And in 50 patients with ILD and lung cancer who were operated, almost 24% had an acute exacerbation within 30 days with a high mortality. And even interstitial pneumonitis and mortality was much higher in patients with lung cancer, those who had was almost 36% mortality. Pre-existing ILD is a very poor prognostic factor for surgical outcomes in lung cancer, and they have a higher risk of ARDS and acute exacerbation of ILD. Now, these very reasons are the fact that as an oncologist, it is very important to bring in the respiratory physician early on. In fact, there are numerous studies over here which show that an involvement of a respiratory physician in the early patient management increase the probability of patients with lung cancer getting active treatment with surgery, chemotherapy, or radiotherapy. And the survival rates also were much higher in patients who saw a pulmonologist rather than those who did not. Surgical rates were also significantly lower in those who did not receive a pulmonologist involvement because the patients were not adequately optimized. Among patients with early COPD, pulmonologist management was associated with almost a 20% reduction in mortality risk. So we do understand a respiratory physician needs to be brought in early in the management so that COPD and ILD can be appropriately recognized. Apart from that, at the first patient visit itself, while the patient is being diagnosed and worked up, nutrition is a very important factor that we can take care of and identify. A very important disease, mind you, it has now been described as a disease and an ICD code has been given, is sarcopenia, of which a lot of people are really unaware. Sarcopenia is a progressive generalized loss of skeletal muscle mass, strength, and function, and with poor risk outcomes, in which there is low muscle mass and low muscle strength and low physical performance. And the important thing is it is not detected by malnutrition risk screening tools and requires much more significant further investigations. Why I'm so much harping about sarcopenia is because it is higher amongst Asian Indian subjects with type 2 diabetes. And as we are already aware, that India is a diabetes capital of the world with almost 50 million suffering from type 2 diabetes. Thus, there are enough people of sarcopenic diabetes, and I'm sure that even your cancer patients would be having them. Sarcopenia also affects almost 15% of patients with stable COPD. And India is in second place for harboring the largest number of COPD patients. So with the association between COPD and cancer, I'm sure you would understand the amount of patients with COPD and sarcopenia whom you would be treating. Another factor which is important is that India is the third most obese country in the world, and sarcopenic obesity is a coexistence of sarcopenia and obesity, which again is extremely important. You will appear the patient is having a good BMI, but the fact is that he is markedly sarcopenic, and consequently, it will affect his outcome. Now you're seeing a particular screen over here, which I'm trying to show you, is how a number of these factors are involved. Sarcopenia, lung cancer, diabetes, which can lead rise to myopathy, sarcopenia, ischemic heart disease, again high in our country, COPD high in our country, can cause sarcopenia, can cause osteoporosis. Osteoporosis again can lead rise to myopathy, anemia, malnutrition, interstitial lung disease, obesity, post-TB sequelae, chronic respiratory infections, all these things. And the worst part, our population is probably very deconditioned and very physically inactive. So all this is the nidus which you will see. And with cancer-related cachexia and fatigue coming in, the problem gets to be even bigger. So the first time you start, you must assess all this, which we tend to overlook as an oncologist. As far as exercise is concerned, obviously exercise is one of the important factors in rehabilitation. This is a paper which is published this month in Anesthesia and Analgesia from Beijing. And it shows here, it was a randomized controlled trial, which says that a 2-week multimodal home-based rehabilitation program improves perioperative functional capacity and improves the 6-minute walk distance by almost 60 meters in patients undergoing thoracoscopic lobectomy for lung cancer. I think it is a worth read thing, and it is something which can easily be emulated by a number of our centers, because the debate has always been whether 2 weeks is enough or whether you should have 4 weeks or 6 weeks of time for this. Next, there is a newer term which is described as return to intended oncological therapy. When you talk about ERAS, you also want to see whether how fast or how quick, how many of the patients after ERAS and minimally invasive surgery actually landed getting up chemotherapy. Did they get adjuvant chemotherapy or did they not get adjuvant chemotherapy? What was the percentage? And what was the duration after the surgery, when they were able to actually go ahead and get chemotherapy? So these two factors again are important determinants of ERAS, and maybe again a marker of whether a patient has benefited with ERAS or not. This is a paper which has been published in Journal of Thoracic Cardiovascular Surgery, which has shown over here that enhanced recovery after surgery was associated with facilitated delivery of adjuvant chemotherapy with a shortened interval to receive adjuvant chemotherapy and a higher rate of receiving 4 or more cycles. So my question to you is ERAS only limited to surgery? Rehabilitation is traditionally focused on surgical treatment, but should it not be introduced early at the time of diagnostic workup itself? What if the patient needs combined modalities of surgery, systemic therapy, and radiotherapy in various sequences? Chemoradiation or immunotherapy may itself cause pulmonary issues. Early lung toxicity recognition is so important because of immunotherapy and other medication as well. multimodality, multi-speciality, and multi-directional patient flows are often seen. So we must realize that ERAS or prehabilitation should not be restricted to just a preoperative area, but it is a continuum of support before, during, as well as after treatment. And I would again bring your attention to this chart, which so well illustrates that with rehabilitation and without rehabilitation, if you see, it should be extended right from diagnosis to treatment to recovery, as well as up to palliative care. And early palliative care, again, is an important part of this. So in our institution, what we do is that we have almost most of our patients at the first assessment itself by the oncologist are invariably referred to the pulmonologist as well, especially if they have symptoms which of dyspnea, or if they have suspicion that may be having other diseases. We refer, we evaluate them, we give them bronchodilators, we do the lung function tests, we do the 6-minute walk test. We refer them to the physiotherapist for a prehabilitation program. This program consists of a PR class as well as an exercise schedule, which consists of aerobic exercises, muscle strengthening, and upper limb, lower limb strengthening exercises. Patients usually undergo that for 10 days to 14 days. We have a high-risk joint clinic, which is attended by the thoracic surgeons, the chest physician, as well as the anesthetist, and we sit down together and discuss patients which are borderline. We optimize them and review them again after that to see if they are now fit enough to undergo surgery. Because as you know, the surgeons would not like to leave even a single patient who is operable, whatever the risk may be, and it is our responsibility to ensure that we take those risks. So my take-home messages are that it is never too late to start prehab, but the earlier you start prehab, the better. Even 2 weeks of exercise is better than nothing at all. Do not consider ERAS isolated to pre-op, but as a continuum of the cancer patient's journey from diagnosis to palliation. Please involve your pulmonologist at the beginning itself. I have the grand privilege of working in an oncology center, and I'm surrounded with oncologists all around me. And it is so heartening to see the amount of interactions that we have amongst ourselves. You just pick up the phone, you refer patients, and this has led to a lot of learning, not even for us, but even for them. We have joint clinics where we have plural JCs and so many other things. So involve your pulmonologist. It's a fruitful bilateral relationship. Utilize services of the multidisciplinary team, including physiotherapists, exercise therapists, nutritionists, and the physician. Mind you, COPD, ILD, diabetes, TB, obesity, sarcopenia, physical inactivity are to be looked for and addressed in every lung cancer patient. This is my last slide, and I would like to highlight over here my lung cancer working group. This is our thoracic disease management group. You can see over here the surgeons over here. You can see the radiation oncologists. You can see the anesthetists over here. Here are the pulmonologists, 3 grand people over here. We have nuclear medicine. We have a palliative care specialist. We have a radiologist, an interventional radiologist. We have the physiotherapist. We have the medical oncology. And we have a grand director who himself is the chief of thoracic surgery. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for patient hearing. I'm open to any